Greater Manchester's mills, cathedrals and tunnels hide darker tales. From haunted halls to eerie theatres and forgotten hospitals, these 10 ghostly places still whisper of tragedy and restless spirits. Smithills Hall. Set on the edge of Bolton's wooded hills, Smithills Hall looks every inch the tranquil Tudor manor. Yet behind its timbered walls is a darker history. In the mid-16th century, during Queen Mary's campaign to restore Catholicism, Protestant preacher Reverend George Marsh was brought here for interrogation. Local legend says he defended his faith so fiercely that he stamped his foot and declared that God would leave a sign of his truth. Marsh was later executed, but the mark of his stand remains. A single footprint in the stone floor is said to turn red and sticky every year on the anniversary of his death, as if the stone still remembers that day of defiance. Visitors speak of much more than one stubborn stain. The great hall and upper chambers echo with footsteps when no one is present. Soft giggles of children drift along silent corridors, mingled with the distant meow of unseen cats and the faint clip of horses' hooves. Sometimes the air thickens with unexplained scents, wood smoke, candle wax, or something metallic like blood. Barrier ropes sway, as if brushed by an invisible passerby, and guests report a sudden pinch on the arm or even on the back, as though some playful spirit cannot resist a touch. Several apparitions complete this haunted tapestry. 2 phantom children are said to dart through the old nursery, their laughter quick and fleeting. A young maid in old-fashioned dress has been glimpsed near the servants' quarters. In the chapel, a shadowy figure kneels in eternal prayer. Some believe it is Reverend Marsh himself. Most unsettling of all is a figure dressed in black, with a mass of white bushy hair occasionally caught staring from mirrors or standing on the grand staircase. One staff member, who bent to remove flowers in the chapel, felt a sudden shove so strong that she staggered against the wall and came away grazed. Whether these encounters are echoes of past tragedies or the work of imagination, the mood of Smithills Hall is unmistakable. Visitors leave with the sense that its centuries of devotion and conflict have soaked into the stones, and that the courageous preacher's challenge still lingers in the quiet air. Ye Old Man and Scythe. On a narrow lane in Bolton's Old Quarter stands Ye Old Man and Scythe, a timber-fronted inn with over 7 centuries of history. Its age alone could justify a haunting, yet the stories tied to this alehouse are as vivid as the dark oak beams inside. The most famous tale reaches back to the chaos of the English Civil War. James Stanley VII, Earl of Derby, was captured and executed outside the inn in 1651. Locals say that his restless spirit never left. Within the cozy museum room, visitors have reported a tall gentleman in period dress, whose face matches historic portraits of Stanley. He lingers in the shadows, sometimes lowering the temperature so sharply that breath clouds in the air. CCTV cameras have even shown a fleeting figure where none should be, as though the Earl still watches the spot of his final hours. But he is not alone. A young girl known only as Jenny is said to appear beside patrons, playfully prodding their arms or tugging at sleeves. Regulars tell of an elderly man in old-fashioned clothes who chooses a corner seat and scowls as though displeased with the modern age. Others describe invisible hands pushing them gently yet firmly toward the cellar steps. On quiet afternoons, glasses tremble, bottles rattle, and sudden cold spots blossom in empty corners. Some nights, the crash of breaking glass echoes from the bar, though nothing lies shattered. Staff speak of lights flicking on and off at set hours, and of the pub's famous long oak bar falling silent before a single bottle topples of its own accord. Even seasoned landlords admit a shiver when the cellars fall quiet, only to erupt in the sound of heavy boots descending unseen. Whether it is the Earl himself, guarding his final ground, Jenny seeking company, or nameless spirits from centuries of revelry, year-old man and Scythe carries an atmosphere beyond its warm fire and ale. Guests who pause under its low beams often feel a prickle at the neck, as if history is leaning close, reminding them that Bolton's most historic pub is alive with more than just memory. Manchester Cathedral, rising above Victoria Street with its carved stone and Gothic spires, Manchester Cathedral has stood since the early 15th century. For 6 centuries, it has been a place of worship and a silent witness to war plague and the changing fortunes of the city. By daylight, the stained glass windows scatter jewel-like light across the ancient nave. Yet when the streets outside fall quiet, a very different atmosphere takes hold. The stillness becomes heavy, and a chill settles like breath held too long. The cathedral's most enduring legend is that of the Black Shuck, a huge ghostly hound with blazing red eyes and matted black fur. Locals once believed this spectral beast was a messenger of death. There are accounts of late-night visitors glimpsing an immense shadow pacing the aisles, claws clicking softly on the stone. One verger in the 1930s described feeling a deep growl that wasn't sound but vibration just before spotting 2 crimson lights glowing where no creature stood. Other phantoms linger here too. Pilgrims at prayer have spoken of monks in silent procession along the choir stalls, their habits stirring without a breeze. A faint chanting has been heard beneath the library and in the crypt, even on the calmest nights when no service is held. Near the south transept, witnesses report a sudden icy current and a figure in a long cassock limping slowly toward a wall, then vanishing into solid stone. Some say this is the spirit of a 17th century cleric who was hanged beneath the nearby archway, condemned for crimes long forgotten. Even the building itself seems alive after dark. Doors creak open of their own accord, the scent of candle wax hangs in the air, and distant organ notes swell and fade, though the instrument stands silent. Whether these are echoes of centuries of devotion or something older and less earthly, the cathedral remains a place where faith and mystery intertwine. Stand alone in the nave as midnight nears, and it feels as if unseen eyes are watching, waiting, and listening from the shadows of the soaring roof. The Octagon Theatre, tucked beside Bolton's Howell Croft South. The Octagon Theatre is a modern playhouse with a surprisingly old soul. By day, its glass front and bright foyer welcome audiences to comedies and classics, but when the house lights fade and the building empties, another story begins to unfold. Quiet corridors seem to stretch longer, the backstage air cools without reason, and faint echoes drift from the darkened stage as if a rehearsal never ended. The theatre's most famous spectre is Frida, the first wardrobe mistress when the Octagon opened in the 1960s. Dedicated and meticulous, she loved the costumes as though they were living things. After her death, staff began to notice sewing machines, whirring with no one near, as if invisible hands were finishing hems. More than one actor has felt a light tug at their costume moments before a cue, a gentle correction they swear is Frida's touch. A former stage manager once heard a soft chuckle beside the wardrobe rails and found every costume hook swaying, though the air was still. But Frida may not be alone. Security lights sometimes flicker like footlights during an unseen performance. Doors that were locked at midnight have been found open at dawn. Footsteps echo across the rehearsal rooms long after everyone has gone, and stage props are discovered moved or neatly rearranged. One visiting director told of a sudden rush of perfume, old-fashioned and powdery, followed by the sound of measured breathing in the empty balcony. Even the audience areas are not spared. Ushers closing the dress circle late at night have reported a fleeting silhouette leaning over the rail, watching with patient curiosity before dissolving into the gloom. Electricians have traced the wiring again and again, yet the mysterious blackouts and sudden light surges continue like cues from a hidden hand. Whether these happenings are Frida keeping watch or other spirits drawn to the theater's creative energy, the Octagon holds a lingering presence. Stand alone on its silent stage, and it is easy to feel that someone unseen and devoted to the craft of performance is still waiting in the wings, guiding every scene long after the curtain falls. Boggart Hole Clough. On the northern edge of Manchester lies Boggart Hole Clough, a vast stretch of woodland and hidden glades that has drawn walkers and families for generations. In daylight, it feels like a welcome retreat from the city's noise. But as evening mist settles across the hollows, the place takes on a far older and stranger character. The very name Boggart speaks of something uncanny, for in northern folklore, a boggart is a shape-shifting spirit, a household or woodland creature blamed for mischief accidents and sudden frights. Local legends tell of a ruined farmhouse, once buried deep within these trees, where an unseen presence was said to torment those who lived there. The farmhouse itself has long since vanished, yet people still speak of something watching from the undergrowth. Ramblers describe hearing low growls and the snap of twigs when no animal can be seen. Others sense a sudden pressure of silence, as if the woods themselves are holding their breath. One autumn evening, a runner reported the uncanny feeling of being followed, catching glimpses of a hunched dark outline that vanished whenever he turned. Parents recall children speaking to invisible companions by the lakeside and leaving offerings of acorns, believing the boggart might be appeased. On stormy nights, strange lights have been glimpsed, weaving between the trees, and more than one visitor claims to have heard their own name whispered from the shadows. Even on bright afternoons, some paths remain cool and unnervingly still, as if the forest remembers its secret resident. Skeptics point to natural sounds and shifting light, yet even they admit that Boggart Hole Clough carries a peculiar tension. The stories of a spirit that unsettles travelers, hides belongings, or simply trails behind with soft padded steps are woven into Manchester's folklore. To wander here as dusk thickens is to sense how thin the line can be between everyday woodland and something older and wilder. Whether the boggart is a restless ghost, an elemental trickster, or just the echo of ancient tales, the clough remains a place where the ordinary woods of day slip quietly into legend and fear. Hall i' the Wood. Northeast of Bolton stands Hall i' the Wood, a timber-framed Tudor house whose crooked beams and echoing staircases have witnessed over 4 centuries of human drama. By day, it is a proud museum of local heritage, but when dusk deepens, the building seems to shift into another age. The air cools, and the scent of old lavender drifts through the rooms as if the past is gently stirring. Legends here are many. Visitors speak of a little old woman glimpsed in the kitchen, busying herself as if supper still needs preparing. In the attic, a pale and sorrowful young girl is sometimes seen, her presence accompanied by a faint sound of weeping. More startling still are the fleeting figures that rush up the staircases. Some describe a cavalier in boots and sash. Others believe it to be a member of the Brownlow family who built the hall in the 16th century. One witness claimed he saw only ankles and feet as the figure darted past, moving far quicker than any living person could. At Christmas time, these strange apparitions are said to grow bolder, as though some long-ago memory is being replayed. Inside the Brownlow bedroom, another story unfolds. Guests have reported the chilling sight of legs and feet dangling over the bed, before fading into thin air, and a woman's silhouette by the window with the perfume of lavender hanging in the air. From the withdrawing room comes the sound of distant music, and occasionally the dark outline of a tall man with a high collar striding calmly from wall to wall. Even the house itself seems alive. Doors open or slam shut without a breath of wind. Light bulbs flicker for no reason. Soft music or a child's laughter floats from empty rooms. Guides tell of footsteps that keep pace with them in long corridors, only to stop when they turn around. Historians can explain the creaks and sudden drafts of an ancient house, yet Hawley the Wood feels more than merely old. Each timber and panel seems steeped in stories that refuse to fade. Whether one believes in spirits or not, a quiet walk through its shadowed rooms is enough to make even the most skeptical visitor glance back into the dim stairwells and wonder who or what might still be following. The Pack Horse. On the windswept ridge of Affetside stands the Pack Horse, an old coaching inn whose thick stone walls have weathered centuries of travelers and tales. By day, it welcomes walkers and locals with warm fires and hearty meals, but when darkness falls, a different presence is said to move within. The timber settles with heavy sighs, and those who listen closely speak of footsteps that do not belong to any living guest. The inn is famous for a singular relic displayed above the bar, the skull of George Whewell, a 17th century executioner. Local legend claims that George, burdened by the deaths he dealt, could never rest in peace. Some say his spirit clings to the place where his remains now watch over drinkers. On quiet nights, heavy footfalls echo from the upper floor, directly above the skull's cabinet. Staff closing up have heard deliberate pacing overhead when every room stands empty. At times, the sound halts abruptly, as if an unseen figure is leaning over the balcony to listen. More unsettling are moments when visitors feel a sudden pressure between their shoulder blades, a firm but invisible shove, urging them toward the staircase that leads to the room above. Glasses rattle without warning. One former landlord spoke of a faint, metallic clink, like the scrape of a blade being drawn just before the footsteps begin. A guest once swore that the skull itself shifted slightly on its stand as the noise rang out. Skeptics might point to the age of the building, its uneven beams and hollow floors, as the cause of creaks and thuds. Yet even hardened locals admit the timing of these sounds is uncanny, often beginning as the last patrons leave and the lights are lowered. There are stories of animals refusing to settle near the display dogs, whining and backing away as if sensing a presence beyond human sight. Whether George Whewell truly walks again or the inn merely echoes with long-buried memories, the Pack Horse holds its secrets tightly. Visitors lingering over a late pint often glance toward the ceiling when the unexplained footsteps start, wondering if the old executioner is pacing above them, still guarding the skull that bears silent witness to a darker age. Barnes Hospital, between Manchester and Stockport, hidden behind trees and fencing near the busy A34, the ruined shell of Barnes Hospital looms like a forgotten cathedral of red brick and dark stone. Built in the late 19th century as a convalescent home and later used as a World War II treatment center, the building has long been empty. Yet those who venture close after dusk speak of an energy that is anything but lifeless. By day, its Gothic towers and tall windows seem merely neglected. But as twilight falls, the place changes. Winds sigh through broken panes like whispered prayers. The empty wards once filled with the sounds of patients and nurses are said to echo with faint cries and the soft shuffle of unseen feet. Visitors walking the perimeter sometimes report sudden drops in temperature as though stepping from summer air into a refrigerated chamber. Others describe the smell of old antiseptic and smoke drifting where no fire burns. Local folklore tells of a nurse who died during an influenza outbreak, still pacing the corridors she once patrolled. A former caretaker, long since retired, recalled hearing a woman's voice calling a patient's name in the dead of night when no one remained inside. Some claim to have glimpsed a shadow crossing a shattered window on an upper floor, or to have seen the faint glow of a lamp moving from room to room, though the building has no power. There are even whispered tales of a spectral doctor, his coat flaring as he turns a corner that no longer exists. Urban explorers speak of uneasy feelings in the central staircase, where footsteps echo a beat behind their own, and of sudden oppressive silence in the operating theatre, as if the walls themselves are holding their breath. Skeptics blame drafts and the natural creaks of a collapsing structure. Yet even they admit there is something uniquely disquieting about the way sound travels here, as if the hospital is replaying memories it refuses to forget. Though fenced and officially off-limits, Barnes Hospital continues to draw curious eyes. Whether one believes in ghosts or simply feels the weight of history, its brooding presence on the roadside ensures that the spirits of Manchester's medical past are never entirely at rest. Underground Manchester, beneath the bustling streets of Manchester, lies a hidden world of forgotten tunnels and echoing chambers that once sheltered thousands during the air raids of the Second World War. Known simply as Underground Manchester, this labyrinth of passages and chambers stretches far under the city centre, weaving beneath familiar streets and squares. Built as air raid shelters and communications bunkers, the tunnels were later abandoned, leaving only silence and the scent of damp stone. What makes these dark corridors remarkable is not only their history, but the legends that cling to them. Guides leading night tours speak of an unseen presence that follows close behind the sound of a second pair of footsteps, keeping pace but never showing a figure. Visitors have reported sudden icy currents of air in completely sealed rooms and faint whispers that seem to seep from the brickwork itself. A former maintenance worker once described the eerie sound of an old train starting up deep beneath the city, even though no track ever ran there. The most persistent stories concern three spirits affectionately known as Scary Mary Maria and Derek. Scary Mary is said to glide silently through the shelter tunnels, her outline barely more than a shadow, yet often accompanied by a smell of old coal smoke. Maria is heard rather than seen, her soft singing and sudden laughs carrying across long stretches of passageway. Derek, by contrast, is mischievous. Guides claim that electrical torches dim or fail when he is near, and visitors sometimes feel a light tap on the shoulder when the group pauses to listen. In one sealed chamber, where wartime families once huddled together, people have spoken of the faint cries of children and the rhythmic drumming of distant bomb blasts, as though the city's darkest nights are still being replayed. Skeptics point to echoes and natural drafts, yet even hardened urban explorers admit that the oppressive stillness can shift without warning into a charged electric atmosphere. Today, official tours allow safe access, reminding visitors to respect the site's fragile structure and history. Whether these phenomena are restless spirits or the lingering memory of a city under siege, Manchester's underworld continues to offer one of its most unsettling and unforgettable encounters. Ordsall Hall. On the banks of the River Irwell in Salford stands Ordsall Hall, a timber-framed Tudor manor whose black and white gables conceal more than 5 centuries of turbulent history. Once home to the powerful Radcliffe family, it is now a museum and heritage site. Yet when the sun sets and the visitors leave, stories of ghostly presences stir within its oak-paneled rooms and echoing staircases. The most famous apparition is the White Lady, believed to be Lady Margaret Radcliffe. Heartbroken after her brother's death in battle, she faded from life and was buried far away in Westminster Abbey. Legend claims she still returns to her beloved hall, her arrival heralded by the sudden fragrance of roses or the soft glow of a lone candle floating across the great hall. School groups often speak of a quiet hush falling before her appearance, as though the house itself is holding its breath. A second spectre is Cecily said to have flung herself from the staircase after being jilted on her wedding day. Visitors in the Star Chamber report fleeting glimpses of a veiled figure and the faint sound of sobbing. Some even feel a brush of cold air rushing past, as though she is still running toward the fatal drop. Sir John Radcliffe, a family ancestor who died fighting in France, is another lingering presence. True to the gallant reputation he enjoyed in life, he is rumored to show particular interest in female guests, occasionally brushing their sleeve or whispering faintly from the shadows. Elsewhere in the house, unexplained lights flicker and footsteps echo across empty corridors. Children's voices are heard in the Star Chamber, and one caretaker once caught the unmistakable smell of horse manure in a sealed room. Visitors speak of invisible breaths against the back of the neck, light bulbs flashing, and dark figures moving just beyond sight. Skeptics might attribute these effects to creaking timber or shifting air currents, but staff and guests alike tell of moments when Ordsall Hall seems alive, with memories too persistent to fade. Whether spirits or legend, the hall keeps its secrets well, leaving each visitor with the sense that some chapters of its story will never rest. Greater Manchester's haunted halls and shadowed tunnels guard centuries of mystery. Share your ghostly encounters in the comments and subscribe to Creepy Experience for more chilling journeys.